All of our learning throughout the week, all of our shiurim are Le'iloi Nishmas, the Kedoshim, in memory of the holy ones and for an elevation of the holy ones who were tragically murdered over Shabbos in Pittsburgh. And let's focus, let's stay focused on our efforts in trying to bring more light into the world. We are on page 298 in the Kuzari. It's subparagraph 7. And what's really interesting is that up until now, Rabbi Yehuda Halevi has been talking about how the saintly person stays very focused on his davening, on his prayers, and really has an appreciation for how the davening is structured in such a way to provide him or her with really an elevating experience. And what he was focusing on the most recently were the blessings of Ahava Rabbah, the first bracha is Yotzer HaMeorot, and then the next one is Ahava Rabbah. That God creates the luminaries, the celestial bodies, and then afterwards we talk about the great love that God has shown us by shining His divine presence upon us and giving us His Torah as a source of connecting ourselves to Hashem. And those are the two prefatory blessings to the Kriya Shema that we say every morning. Now, here, in this next paragraph, Rabbi Yehuda Halevi finds an additional connection and relevance to these two blessings and how they're very much interconnected, reflecting upon the celestial bodies and reflecting upon the condition of the Jewish people as the recipients of the Torah and connected to God. Before, he had called it divine light. And so the connection that he made previously, last week when we talked about it, is that just like the sun provides warmth and light to the world, God shines upon us His divine light by giving us the Torah. And that's certainly one connection. But here, let's take a look now on page 298, when we see another connection that Rabbi Yehuda Halevi offers for this idea of connecting the celestial bodies to the condition of the Jewish people. And he writes as follows: God could only find a few really outstanding saintly people from the generations of Adam to Yaakov who were able to follow in the footsteps of the luminaries and celestial bodies to receive and obediently follow the divinity and adhere to a specific protocol which he commanded. The immediate thing that jumps out at you is that when God talks about righteous people in the earlier generations, he says God could only find a few people who were able to follow in the footsteps or in the example of the celestial bodies. So what is he trying to tell us over here? The celestial bodies are obedient to God, and when God was looking for human beings who could imitate the celestial bodies in their obedience, God could only find a few people who were able to do that. So, that's a strange way of saying that in the earlier generations, God could only find a few righteous people who were willing to serve Him faithfully. You don't normally think of it as, oh, that person is so righteous, he's just like the stars. You don't normally think in those terms, right? You ever hear someone say, well, you could say someone's a star, right? That's something you could say. But when you say someone's a star, you mean that they're shining brightly. But what does it mean that they're like the stars or the moon and the sun, in that they obediently follow Hashem? So let's finish the paragraph, and then we're going to see that this is actually a very important theme that we find in the words of our sages, that righteous people are like the celestial bodies. Individuals eventually became a community, and the divinity lovingly rested upon them to be for them as a God. Now he takes the analogy between the Jewish people and the celestial bodies even further. And he says that when you think about how God configured and organized the Jewish people, he wanted them to resemble stars even in their physical configurations. Let's see what he says. God organized them in the desert according to the order of the constellations, arranging 4 banners of encampment corresponding to the 4 celestial quarter cycles. He established 12 tribes corresponding to the 12 signs of the zodiac. He placed the Levite camp in the center of the other camps, in keeping with what Sefer Yetzirah describes about the constellations. The Holy Temple is situated in the center and orchestrates the constellations. So, you're seeing over here some kind of analogy between the configuration of the Jewish people and their encampment in the desert and the stars. So in the footnote, we just point out, in footnote number 125, if you want to take a look at that, in modeling the Jewish people after celestial bodies, it was appropriate to place them in the desert, a barren environment similar to that of outer space. But despite their barren environments, both the celestial bodies and the Jewish people faithfully followed God. This is the commentary of the Otzar Nechman, who points out that notice how Hashem placed us in the desert, like placing us out in the middle of space, in the middle of nowhere, and he configured our tribes to correspond to the 12 signs of the zodiac, which means, Capricorn, Leo, Virgo, all of the different signs of the zodiac, which are real things, the different configurations of the stars in ancient and medieval Jewish literature. Those are real things, the mazalot. And also the 4 quadrants that are configured in the desert, as is recorded in Parshas Bamidbar, which each quadrant was comprised of 3 tribes to make up the 12 tribes. That corresponds to 4 celestial configurations corresponding to the 4 seasons. So what you have over here is Rabbi Yehuda Halevi telling you that there's another direct corollary between the bracha of Yotzer HaMe'orot and Ahava Rabbah. Yotzer HaMe'orot talks about God's creation of the celestial bodies and how he embeds them in the sky and makes them move, and the whole world works and worships Hashem, even in the celestial sphere. And then we go to the bracha of Ahava Rabbah, which is about the Jewish people. You have loved us, Hashem, shined a divine light upon us, and you have given us your Torah. So what's the connection? So we talked about connection last week, and now the new connection is that the Jewish people look to the celestial bodies as an example of how we're supposed to be configured. Our righteousness is supposed to mimic in some way the righteousness of the celestial bodies. Well, what in the world does that mean? The righteousness of the celestial bodies. What do we mean by that? How is it that celestial bodies are righteous? Well, the answer is that they follow the edicts of Hashem faithfully without digressing from their orbits. You can be assured, every morning when you wake up, the sun will rise in the east, and in the evening it will set in the west. The sun doesn't deviate from its orbit. It faithfully follows its orbit. Now, this is not just a statement of the sages. This is what King David said in Sefer Tehillim. Remember, we long time ago when we first started this discussion of the blessings of Kriya Shema, we pointed out that the sages actually patterned themselves after Psalm 19. It's in source number 2. It should have really been source number 1. Source number 2 in your handout says, Lamnatseach mizmor leDavid, Hashamayim misaperim kevod kel, u'ma'aseh yadav magid harakia. The heavens relate the glory of God, and his handiwork is uttered by the firmament. Yom liyom yabia omer, day to day, or on a daily basis, there is an utterance of the divine coming from the heavens. V'layla l'layla yechave da'as, and every night there's an expression of knowledge. Ein omer ve'ein devarim b'li nishma kolam, not an audible voice, but without words, and without their voice being heard, they are still expressing divine wisdom. B'chol haaretz yatsa kavam, that throughout the land, the heavenly bodies go out in their trajectory. Uviktsei tevel milehem, and they fill every corner of the earth. Lashemesh sam ohel bahem, and God placed the sun as a tent or as a covering over the entire planet. V'hu kechasan yotzei mechupaso, the sun is like a bridegroom going out from his chuppah to greet his bride. Yasis ki gibor larutz orach, he is rejoicing like a warrior to run to his host, or to run to his guest, I should say. In other words, to greet his bride. Miktsei hashamayim motzo, etc., etc. Okay? Now, immediately after this description of the mightiness and of the sun, King David then launches into his discussion of Toras Hashem Timima. The Torah of God is pure. And of course, what's the connection? It's the same idea that Rabbi Yehuda Halevi is getting to over here. If you want to see an example of obedience and service of the Creator, go and look at the sun. Go and look at the stars. They constantly obey Hashem. Now the sages then speak this out more clearly. And by the way, one of the other explanations that we gave is that as amazing as the celestial bodies are, the Torah of Hashem is even more amazing. That was one of the explanations that we gave early on. But here, what Rabbi Yehuda Halevi is saying is that, no, it's not just what's more amazing than that, but it's that the Torah allows us, through God's giving us of the Torah, we are enabled to emulate the motions of the celestial bodies. So take a look in source number 1. There's a pasuk towards the end of the Torah in Parshas Vayelech. It says, Ha'idosi vachem hayom es hashamayim ves haaretz. I hereby bring forth testimony today. Heaven and earth I bring forth as my witnesses. Hachayim v'hamaves nasati lefanecha. I have placed before you life and death. Habaracha v'haklala, blessing and curse. Uvacharta b'chayim leman tichya ta v'zarecha. Choose life so that you and your children might live. Now, comes along Rashi and quotes the Midrash. This is source number 3. Ha'idosi vachem hayom es hashamayim ves haaretz. I bring forth as my witnesses heaven and earth. Look at Rashi. Shehem kayamim la'olam v'cha'asher tikre etchem hara'a yihiyu edim sha'ani hitarti bachem b'chol zot. Rashi's first explanation is, why does God bring heaven and earth as witnesses? Because heaven and earth are eternal. So there may be people who only live one lifespan. 70, 80, 90, even 100 years people could live. But they won't be able to testify about the long term of history. Who can truly testify about the righteousness of God over the course of human history? Heaven and earth. No one else lives that long. So heaven and earth are my only reliable witnesses, says Hashem. That's the first explanation in Rashi. Davar acher, second explanation. Ha'idosi v'chem hayom es hashamayim v'goimer, omer lahem hakadosh baruch hu liyisrael. God says to Israel, Histaklu b'shamayim shebarati l'shamesh etchem. Take a look at the heavens that I created to serve you. Shema shinu et midatam. Do you think they ever changed their trajectory? Shema lo ala galgal chama min hamizrach vehi'ir lechol ha'olam. Did you ever see a day in your life when the sun did not rise in the east and illuminate the entire world? Ki inyan shene'emar v'zarach hashemesh uba hashemesh, as King Solomon writes in Ecclesiastes. The sun comes up, the sun goes down. It's faithful, faithful sun. Histaklu ba'aretz shebarati l'shamesh etchem. Take a look at the earth that I created to serve you. And these are the sort of the witnesses that Hashem is saying, these are the witnesses of what it means to be faithful. Shema shinata midata. Do you think the earth ever changed its nature? Shema zaratem ota v'lo tzamcha. Did you ever plant in the earth and it didn't produce seeds? It didn't produce produce? The earth, no matter what you do, whether you are righteous or not, whenever you plant, the earth responds. O shema zaratem chitim v'he'elata se'orim. Did you ever plant wheat and get barley stalks instead? Uma elu shena'asu lo lischar v'lo lehefsed. Now look at these things. These celestial bodies were not created to receive reward or punishment. And yet, im zochin ein mekablin schar v'im chotin ein mekablin pornut, meaning that if they act meritoriously, they are not rewarded. And if they deviate from the commandments, they do not get punished. If the sun were to decide it's not coming up one day, it wouldn't get punished for it. It would be catastrophic to the world, but the sun, God wouldn't punish the sun. Lo shinu et minat, and nevertheless, the sun, the moon, and the stars have not changed their faithful trajectory. Atem she'im zichitem tekablu sechar ve'im chatatem tekablu pur'anut al achat kama v'chama. So you, as Bnei Yisrael, you know that the stakes for you are real. If you act meritoriously, you will be rewarded. And if you sin, you will be punished. So how much more so do you have a responsibility to act faithfully? Okay, so what's the immediate problem with all of this? Mrs. Sochachevsky, what problem do you have with this?
Well, it's obvious. I mean, Hashem set them into motion. They have no choice.
Exactly. Could not have said it better. Yes, okay. Bechira chofshit, exactly. They don't have bechira chofshit. What's going on? What kind of analogy is this? Right? Learn from the sun and the moon and the stars. I mean, look. I mean, especially with the advent of Newtonian Newtonian science and Galileo, Copernicus, we know, God put everything into motion. There's gravitational force, there's centrifugal force. What's going on over here? Come on. I mean, what? The sun has to think every morning. Am I going to continue my motions? I mean, it's really not even the sun that's moving. It's the earth that's spinning, right? And moving around the sun. The earth has to decide whether it's going to continue moving. What is this? What's going on over here? Okay, Shem Mishmol. Take a look. We'll try to run through this quickly. V'yesh lahavim. Yes.
No, I had thought of that, but then I thought maybe he's thinking, like we had discussed, that Rev Dessler says that you bring yourself to a point where it's as if you have no choice because it's so clear to you what you have to do to serve Hashem. So just like it's so clear that the sun has to keep doing what it's doing, maybe Hashem is expecting us to
get to that point. Beautiful. Okay. Let's take a look at the Shem Mishmol. I think you're on the right track. V'yesh lahavin. My kal v'chomer hu zeh, shehem einam ba'alei b'chira, v'ha'adam hu ba'al b'chira. It's such an obvious, glaring question. The celestial bodies have no free will. We have free will. So how are we supposed to learn from an inanimate object that has no free will? V'nir'eh dihinei b'Ramban, da'adam harishon kodem hachet haya oseh b'tiv'o ma shera'ui la'asot. Now, let's understand. The Ramban in his commentary to the Torah tells us that Adam, before he sinned, acted according to his nature. In other words, he was embedded with a certain nature and he acted seemingly without any free will. Umashma shelo haya ba'al bechira. V'chein yihiyeh la'atid achar tikun ha'olam. It sounds like that Adam had no free will before he ate from the tree. And our sages tell us that we will return back to the state of Adam when Mashiach comes, at the time of Tikkun Ha'olam. Ve'al kein ketiv v'higiu shanim asher tomar ein li bahem chayfetz. That's what King Solomon means when he says in Ecclesiastes, there will come a time when you will say, I no longer have a desire. So what does that pasuk mean? V'amru zal elu yemot HaMashiach she'ein bahem lo zuchut v'lo chova. This is the time in the Messianic age where there will be no reward and punishment. Ki hazuchut v'hachova tuluyim b'chayfetz ayin sham. Because reward and punishment are dependent upon a person's desire to either sin or to act meritoriously. And if we get to a point where we will be so elevated that we will no longer have free will, we no longer will be capable of being rewarded for acting properly. Yes, Sean?
So there's no Yetzer Hara, that's what you're saying?
There will be an eradication of the Yetzer Hara. That's exactly what he's saying. Umashma kodem hachet v'chein liyamot hamashiach lo yihiyeh ha'adam ba'al b'chira. And it seems like before this Adam sin, and once Mashiach comes, we will no longer have free will. V'yesh lahavin. So that leads to another question. Di'im kain me'ayin ba Adam harishon lichlal chet. Then how did Adam ever sin in the first place? If he had no free will, how did he choose to eat from the tree if it was against God's will? Doesn't that imply that he had free will? That's an obvious question, right? It's a question that's one of those mysteries that we sort of gloss over when we learn the story. Va'od ki bisforno shepiresh kitzalmenu bidmusenu hainu sheyihiyeh ba'al b'chira v'im kein harei adam harishon kodam achet hayanami ba'al b'chira. What's also perplexing is that the Sforno says that when the Torah says, let us create man in our image, what does it mean to be created in God's image? To have free will. So if God initially decided when he was going to create man that he was going to have free will, what was his status before he sinned? Did he have free will or did he not have free will? V'nir'eh. It seems to me as follows. Da'afte ha'adam hu ba'al b'chira la'asot davar v'hefcho mikol makom lo yitachen lomar shehu ba'al b'chira lahoshit yado letoch eish bo'era. Now, everyone has free will. But let me ask you a question. Do you have free will to stick your hand into a furnace, into a flame? Do you really have free will? Do you have free will to jump off a roof? Do you have that free will? We all have that choice, right? We all have a choice to stick our arm into... I can become as gory as I want, but I'll avoid the gore. But we can stick our arm into, I was going to say a shredder machine or something like that, a chipper, But we can all stick our arm into a fiery furnace if we want to. We have free will to do that. But do we really have free will? It's almost impossible for us to freely choose to do that. Why? Because we immediately know in our minds what the consequences will be, and we recoil. There's like an instinct within us that says, how can you possibly do that? There's no way you're going to do that. And yet, at the same time, we do have the freedom to do it if we so desire. Yeah. So, ole echol gechalim bo'orot. Does a person have free will to eat hot coals? Af shebiyado la'asot kacha, aval ba'asher nafsho soledet mizeh, but because a person's soul recoils from this, you really can't say that a person has free will. Notice, free will is not binary. It's not either yes, you have the free will, or you don't have the free will. There's nuance with it, within that prism, or within that arc, within that continuum of free will. Right? Uve'emet yoter mizeh hayta tzricha liyot avera be'inei adam shezeh soref rak ba'olam hazeh v'zeh ba'olam hazeh uva'olam haba. And he says the truth of the matter is that we really, whenever we think about committing a sin, it should be in our eyes as impossible for us as sticking our arm in a furnace. Because when you stick your arm in a furnace, what's the worst that happens? You burn your arm. But only in this world. You only burn your physical arm. But if you sin, what are you doing? You're not only burning yourself in this world, but you're burning your neshama as well. Yeah. Uvegehenem asher yisurei sha'a echat mimena kol yisurei iyav kol yemei ha'adam lo yishvula k'mo shekatav Ramban b'shar ha'gemul. And as the Ramban writes when he talks about the retribution of Gehenim, he says that's like a burning that is incomparable to any kind of pain that a person could experience his entire life. It's worse than all of the sufferings of Job. How then does a person have free will if he truly knows the consequences? I know the consequences of sticking my arm in the oven. And I also know the consequences of speaking Lashon Hara, right? So why is it so easy for me to speak Lashon Hara and so hard for me to stick my hand in a furnace? So he says, "Ela mikol makom ba'asher ha'adam yoshev choshech v'tzal mavet tach meiraot einav v'chadal lahaskil mahu lefanav." But we sit in darkness. We allow the blindness to shroud our eyes. Al kain shavhu al ba'al b'chira, or shavhu ba'al b'chira. That's how we become people of free will. the only person who truly has free will is a person who allows himself to be blinded to the reality of his behavior. But if we all knew, like if I knew that eating treif was like eating a bowl of worms, that are still moving, right? And I said to you, do you realize, it's almost like, I can hear my mother speaking to me, you eat a hamburger that has all that fat. Do you realize what that's doing to your arteries, right? If someone really knew what the reality or the real consequences of our behavior is, we wouldn't have free will. But God allows us to have free will by what? By shrouding reality in this mirage that we call free will. Yes?
But that's not always true. If you make a morally right choice, then you are doing the right, you have the choice to choose the right.
Yeah, but you only have that choice because there's so much ambiguity and opaqueness. What if everything was morally crystal clear? Then it wouldn't be free will anymore. It would be so obvious that to choose life, right? וממילא מובן אשר אדם הראשון קודם החטא שהיו עיניו פקוחות, אף שהבחירה הייתה בידו לעשות או לחדול, מכל מקום לא היה נקרא בעל בחירה. So that's really how we describe Adam before the sin. He had greater clarity of understanding of the difference between good and evil. He had an understanding of what was correct and what was incorrect. There's a misnomer. We think that when Adam ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, that he became smarter. Actually, ingesting from the tree granted him free will to have the illusion of good and evil. The way that the Nefesh HaChaim explains it is that before Adam ate from the tree, there was no good and evil. There was truth and falsehood, emes and sheker. There was only reality or the lack of reality. But when Adam ingested of the tree, what happened is that this opaqueness shrouded his eyes, and everything became now nuanced, and it was no longer truth and falsehood, but it was good and evil. Well, if it's just good and evil, then sometimes I can choose to do evil and justify it. But if it's truth and falsehood, I can't justify something which is absolutely the negation of reality. Anyway, so that's what happened. That's how Adam becomes a Baal Bechira. By eating of the tree, his vision goes. Yes?
The question is why would Hashem set up such a setting? Like why? What's the purpose of it?
Oh, why did Hashem do that?
Yeah.
Oh, because how are we most godlike? How are we most godlike? When we choose, when we have the ability to choose. And also, as the Sfarim write, God wanted man to feel that he had earned his keep. If everything was so obvious, what is good and what is bad, then it becomes nahama dikisufa, as the Talmud says, it becomes the bread of shame. God's just giving us free things. It doesn't become as enjoyable. When you work hard and you know that it took a tremendous amount of sacrifice to be able to succeed, then you feel better about the fruits of that success. And that's why Hashem created us with Bechira, because life is a struggle. If life was not a struggle, then we wouldn't enjoy the reward as much at the end of life. Michelle?
With the explanation you just gave, would that change the way Chava is looked at in the story?
I'm not sure.
In terms of giving, a lot of times there's blame as to that she kind of encouraged it.
Right. I mean, it seems to me that we're sort of glossing over the different roles that Adam and Chava played in this sin, but we say collectively they consciously chose to obscure their vision.
Okay.
This was a conscious decision that Adam and Chava had, that we would be better off serving Hashem in darkness than serving Hashem with clarity. And this is a theme that we've spoken about many times before, that it is more precious to Hashem when you choose God amidst the lack of clarity, amidst the darkness, and you still say, I'm sticking with God, than when you choose God when everything is so clear. Yes? Yes?
So why didn't Hashem create the world like that to begin with?
Great question. something that we won't touch on for today.
I'm supposed to go through the rest of my life not knowing?
We talked about this. We spoke 5 years ago. We talked about it. Don't you remember? I mean, the simple answer is that because emanating from God can only be that which is perfect. And so when you look at the first several chapters of Bereshit, of Genesis, you see that the world has to devolve to what it is for human civilization, but it has to be man's participation in creating that devolution, because that which comes from Hashem is by definition perfect. It involves a lot of philosophical discussion about that topic, but that's the bottom line. God says, I created you perfect. I need your participation to make you less than perfect, to realize your whole purpose in creation. Yes, sir.
Does that also include the lack of clarity versus clarity, include like the idea of the punishment that we don't understand why righteous people suffer, etc., etc.?
That's part of the obscurity. That's part of the darkness.
Of
Yeah.
not understanding
Right.
why good things.
Yeah. What happened in Pittsburgh? How could it happen? How could God allow it to happen? And when we choose to stay faithful to Hashem, and we're not going to deviate, no matter what. Right? After 6 million people are annihilated, and we still stay faithful to Hashem, we still stay faithful to our people and to our faith. Right? That's the true devotion and dedication of the Jewish people.
And the idea of punishment, we can't even, with our own minds, interpret punishment. Because
It's impossible. It's impossible. Mikol mokom lo hayana kro ba'al b'chira. So therefore, man has free will, but he doesn't have free will before the sin, because he has such clarity of vision. Okay, v'kach yeh ha'inyan le'atid, dichtiv ki kulam yadu'u oti lemikatnam ve'ad gedolam. And that'll be the way when Mashiach comes. We'll still have free will, right? But when we talk about the eradication of the Yetzer Hara, it means yakiru v'yedu'u kol yoshvei tevel, like we say in Aleinu. Everyone will have this clarity of vision, so that it will be almost like there's no choice anymore but to do good. As it says in Yeshaya, that's when the eyes of the blind will be opened. Man will still have free will, but it'll be a time when you have no desire to do evil. Now we can understand how Adam was able to sin. Okay, and then he goes into sort of a more esoteric discussion of how Adam sinned. And it says, so how does it mean, what after the sin, their eyes open up and they discover that they are blind, right? He says,
Blind or naked?
what?
Blind or naked?
I'm sorry. They realized that they were naked. Their eyes were opened, and they realized that they were naked. And so what he explains means, he says, Michlal dekodem lazat tach einav meraot, ela shachar kach nifkachu einav. So there was a temporary blindness in man, and then his eyes were opened. Anyway, so that's in the final paragraph. He says, V'yesh lomar shebazeh she'amar Moshe histaklu b'shamayim nitain bahem koach histaklut v'nifkechu eineihem shebe'im ha'adam rotzeh lihistakel be'eina pekicha be'einav yireh sheha'avera hi yoter geru'ah harbei milahapil atzmo lekivshan eish bo'er. He says what Moshe was calling upon the Jewish people when he says, I bring heaven and earth to testify, as witnesses. What he's saying, open up your eyes, even though you have free will, but open up your eyes that sinning, choosing to do wrong, to do evil, is even worse than sticking your hand in a furnace. V'shuv harei nechshav kilu eino ba'al b'chira klal. And then you'll be like people who have no free will anymore at all. And therefore, v'hinei b'meh amar shema lo Allah galgal chama min hamizrach u'shema shinata haaretz midata shezeratem ota v'lo tzamcha. He says, and therefore his metaphor, his analogy to the sun constantly obeying its trajectory, and the earth constantly producing produce, ein haperush guf v'chomer hachama ve'aretz shehem einam osim b'dat ve'ein shayach lomar lahem kacha. He says it's not referring to the physical aspect of the sun and the moon, because that's inanimate. Ela hapirush malachim manhigei hachama. What we're talking about, there is a celestial intelligence that we call the angels that control the forces of the sun and the moon and the stars or the earth. Ka'amram zal, as our sages tell us, ein lecha kol esev ve'esev milamata she'ein memuneh alav milamala v'shomer oto shemakeh oto ve'omer lo gadel. Every blade of grass has an angel telling it to grow. And so there's a certain sentience within all of nature. It is almost like the neshama of all of nature. Every blade of grass has a little neshama. It's called a malach. It's called a little angel that is in charge of making it grow. So there is that sentience that exists within even inanimate objects, and that's what is meant, is that even though they don't have free will, these intelligent creations of Hashem, but nevertheless, we are supposed to, as you had quoted from the Michtav Meliyahu, we're supposed to arrive to that madrega where our eyes are just as opened as the sentience that runs the sun, or the sentience that causes the earth to grow, and reach that level as well. So that gives us at least some level of insight into what Rabbi Yehuda Halevi is teaching us now, which is that our source of emulation is supposed to be the sun, the moon, and the stars. When we look up at the sky and we realize that there's a certain natural order to the world, there's supposed to be a certain natural order to human behavior. Whenever we commit evil, whether as individuals or as a society, we are deviating from the natural order, just as much as there would be a deviation of the natural order were the sun not to rise in the east. That's what we're supposed to be impressing upon ourselves when we think about a natural order of nature. It is natural for man to do good and to see the light of God in the world and to follow that light. It is unnatural for man to commit evil. And that's what we have to just keep affirming to ourselves. It's a very encouraging kind of message, because essentially it tells us that in our core there is something calling us to if we just realized what is within us, we would always be doing the right thing. But it is sometimes the opaqueness and the blindness that is contained within this world that prevents us from seeing the innate nature of goodness that is within every human being. So many times people are very, very far from themselves, but that's just the nature of mankind.